Hello students, welcome to online course of Mechanical Measurement and Metrology. Myself Abhishek Trivedi from Mechanical Engineering Department at LJ Institute of Engineering and Technology. What we are discussing? We are discussing force, torque, pressure, strain and temperature measuring instruments, in which we have discussed the force measuring instruments. In the particularly force measuring instrument, in the previous lecture we have discussed the probing ring and cantilever beam load cell. The particularly probing ring is useful to find the load by taking the external forces, and we are calculating the value of the force by checking the change of the shape of the probing ring by using the micrometer wheels. Whereas in the cantilever beam load cell, we are taking the external force at the end of the cantilever beam in terms of point load or the UDL or the UVL, or we can say uniformly distributed load, or the in case of the uniformly variable load. Then we are simply calculating the total deflection generated, total linear deflection generated inside the cantilever beam at the point of application of the load, and then we are simply using the equations from the strength of material concept, and we are calculating the value of the force. If we know the value of the modulus of elasticity of the given material which is used to manufacture the cantilever beam, then we know the value of the length of the cantilever beam, cross sectional area of the cantilever beam, and if we know the linear displacement, or we can say linear deflection generated inside the cantilever beam due to the application of the force. We have discussed these particular topics. Today we are going to discuss the three different load cells. The first one, hydraulic load cell, pneumatic load cell, and we are going to discuss the strain gauge load cell. Probably today the portion of the force measurement will be ended. So let us start with the brief idea about the hydraulic load cell. The first one, that is the hydraulic load cell. The figure shows a basic concept of hydraulic load cell. To understand the hydraulic load cell, you have to understand the basic concept of pressure. What do you mean by pressure? Pressure is the total application of the force over the area is known as a pressure. P is equal to F by A. We know the unit of force and we know the unit of area. So the unit of the pressure, that is the Newton per meter square. Do remember one thing, suppose this is the surface, then whatever the force is applied, the force is applied over a point on the surface. This is known as a force. But if we have distributed the forces in the different spots like this, if the application of the force is over the area instead of over a point, then it is known as a pressure. This is the basic difference behind the force and the pressure. Force is applied on a point, whereas pressure is applied on the surface, over a surface. The Pascal says that, suppose if this kind of tank is available and this is the piston provided over one side of the tank and the second piston is provided over the another side of the tank, as you can check from the figure, the diameter of this particular cylinder arrangement, that is, let's say D1, and the diameter of this particular arrangement is, let's say, D2. So from the figure you can check D1 is very much higher than D2. Still, whatever the pressure is applied over here and whatever the displacement generated is exactly equal to the displacement generated over here, and the pressure will be exerted over the second end of the piston cylinder arrangement. This is the law of pressure. We can say that whatever the force or whatever the pressure will be generated, the liquid will directly transfer the same pressure to the second position, to the end of the second cylinder. This is the basic concept of the hydraulic pressure system. Now we are going to discuss the constructional details of the particular hydraulic load cell. A routine platform has been given. Now we are going to discuss the basic constructional features of the hydraulic load cell, and then we are going to discuss the application, we can say the working of the hydraulic load cell. The very first and very basic element for the hydraulic load cell is the loading platform. This is the loading platform on which the force is to be applied. Then below the loading platform we have designed the piston. I will change the color of the pen. This is the piston arrangement. The piston is used to transfer the force from the loading platform to the liquid. Then a routine metallic diaphragm has been provided over here. The red color in the figure you can check, this is the diaphragm. A metallic diaphragm has been provided. Then below the metallic diaphragm, the oil or the liquid with the high viscosity has been provided or filled. Then the packing seal is to be given to avoid the leakage of the forces, to avoid the leakage of the oil. Then the whole assembly will be fastened by the stud and nut. Pressure gauge is given on which the pressure, whatever the pressure is applied, we are supposed to measure the pressure, or we can say we are supposed to measure the change of the pressure. This is the very basic constructional details of the hydraulic load cell. Now how it will work. So from second figure you can check how the hydraulic load cell will work. Suppose this is the basic concept. Over here the oil has been filled. The oil is also filled in the hose piping to the pressure gauge, and then the pressure gauge is given. This is the very brief idea about how the particularly hydraulic load cell will work. Suppose you are applying the force over here. Once you are applying the force on a area, mark my word, you are applying a force, you know the force is a pointed position, but you are applying the number of forces on over the area of the piston. Then the piston will start transferring the forces to the oil, to the liquid. As we know that the liquid or the oil is incompressible in the nature, so it is not going to be compressed. They simply try to rise in the pressure, and whatever the change of the pressure, whatever the rise of the pressure is generated, the rise of the pressure will be maintained inside the chamber as well as inside the hose pipe, as well as it will be transferred to the pressure gauge, and the pressure gauge will show some kind of deflected position. Here suppose let's say this is the P1, then the pressure gauge will show the value of the P2. P2 means the higher pressure has been generated inside the hose piping as well as inside the chamber of the piston cylinder arrangement. So whatever the change of the pressure will be generated, you are simply calculating the change of the pressure, let's say delta P, that is equal to F upon area. Now what is the area? You know the area of the loading platform on which the force has been provided. Then you are simply put the value of area over here. You are supposed to find the F, that is the delta P, which is in the Newton per, let's say, meter square, and in the area which is in the only meter square. So from the equation you can cancel the meter square on both the side. So F is equal to delta P into area in terms of Newton, where Newton is the basic division, or we can say Newton is the basic unit for the measurement of the forces. So this is how we can measure the hydraulic load cell. There is a one drawback about the hydraulic system, or we can say hydraulic load cell system. The very basic drawback is, if the leakage has been generated, then there is no any proper way to make sure that your system will not going to be harmful, or we can say your system will not going to be become oily due to the leakage of the loading oil. We have to maintain the loading oil, or we have to maintain the oil or the liquid which is filled inside the system properly. The piping system must be checked regularly. If there is any chance of the leakage, then you have to repair it as soon as possible. Other than that, you are not supposed to use the hydraulic load cell. The very well advantage of the hydraulic load cell is it can take the load up to millions of newtons as well. So hydraulic load cell is very much useful for the wide range of application as well as for the high range of applications. You are supposed to measure the loading effect, or you are supposed to measure the load which is starting with the range of kilonewton to the mega newtons. So it is a very helpful for the measurement of the load with the heavy range you are supposed to use by using the hydraulic load cell. The next one, that is the pneumatic load cell. As the name suggests, pneumatic load cell means the load cell which is useful, or we can say the load cell which is used by using the compressed air. The same concept has been repeated from the hydraulic load cell and the pneumatic load cell. In a particularly pneumatic load cell, we are using the compressed air. We are using compressed air. So what we are supposed to do, we are using a chamber in which the air has to be filled. The chamber is attached with the diaphragm. This is the metallic diaphragm. Then the metallic diaphragm is directly connected to the platform on which the load is to be provided. This is the pneumatic load cell platform. A nozzle has been set over here because the nozzle will directly attach to the float valve. This is your float valve, which is used to maintain the system properly and to avoid the breakage inside the piping or inside the system. Then the exit chamber, the exit of the chamber is provided and which is connected to the floating valve. The supply of the compressed air is to be provided and the pressure gauge is to be given for the measurement of the reading. In the initial case, the supply has been started, we are providing the air. In the very first case, suppose load is not there, then whatever the dead weight generated due to this particular diaphragm, due to this particular attachment, due to this particular loading platform, the exact amount of the pressure force has been generated inside the chamber to resist the dead weight which is acted over it. Then once we start increasing the loading pressure, or we can say once we start increasing the loading force over the loading platform, there is a tendency that the diaphragm will slightly moving in the downward direction. The whole assembly will start moving in the downward direction. Once the assembly will start moving in the downward direction, the nozzle will getting the higher back pressure. The back pressure which is generated inside the nozzle setup will be rising just because of the decreasing the area which is available for the access, or we can say which is available for the easy movement of the molecule which are coming out from the nozzles. And due to the generation of the back pressure, the float valve will work properly and it will be open slightly higher than the exit condition, and the compressed air will be start passing inside the particularly chamber. Once the compressed air has been started passing through the chamber, the pressure inside the chamber will be start rising and it will be start resisting the downward motion of the diaphragm. And once the equilibrium has been attached, the position of the diaphragm will be again reach to its zero line condition, or we can say reach to its zero position. And after reaching the position of the diaphragm to its zero or to its ideal condition, what we are supposed to do, we are simply measuring the pressure available inside the chamber. Suppose the second case, we have the pressure value of P2. In the very initial condition, we have the pressure, let's say P1. We are supposed to find the delta P. And the same equation which we are using in the hydraulic system, we are using the same equation to find the value of the force which is acted on the pneumatic load cell. The main drawback of the system is we are using the compressed air, and compressed air is not accessible, which is very costly in terms of compression of the air. Do remember one thing, compression of the hydraulic system, compression of the oil or the liquid is much more easier than the compression of the air, because the compressor required higher power input with comparison to the pump which required a very lesser power input to compress the liquid. So we are not supposed to use pneumatic load cell if and when it is not required, but when it is required, it is compulsory to use pneumatic load cell because it's a very clean arrangement for the measurement of the forces. If there is a chance of any flame, then we are using a pneumatic load cell, because in the hydraulic load cell, continuous use of the hydraulic oil with the heavy pressure and temperature, with the heavy pressure, there might some chance of increase in the temperature. So in those particular cases, we are using the pneumatic load cell, but the load cell itself having some limitation of increasing the pressure value, increasing the force value. We can measure up to some kilonewton only. Beyond that, the hydraulic load cell is much more preferable than the pneumatic load cell. In the particular pneumatic load cell, once we are start increasing the pressure, the first of all the air will start getting compressed. The density of the air will start increasing. We are not supposed to find the change of the pressure, you are supposed to find the change of density, you are supposed to find the change of the consumption or accumulation of the air molecules. Once it will achieve its basic compressed size, then and then the rise of the pressure will be generated. So whatever the work input has been provided, the half portion, or we can say 30 to 40% of the work input will be utilized to compress the air, to increase the density of the air. Then and then the remaining will be useful for increasing the pressure of the given air. So this is the basic case that we are supposed to provide the higher amount of the work as a input for the compressor, whereas in the case of the pump is utilized with the oil and the liquid, and both the oil and liquid are incompressible in the nature, so there is no any scope for the compression of the oil or the liquid. We are simply rising the pressure of the oil and liquid directly. So guys, this is the case of the hydraulic pneumatic load cell and the basic difference between the hydraulic and pneumatic load cell system. The last load cell which we are using in the measurement of the force, that is the strain gauge load cell. As the name suggests, we are using the strain gauge. We are using the concept of the strain. The whatever the instrument which is used to measure the force is known as a strain gauge load cell. Now, what do you mean by strain? Strain means, let's say, change of length to its original length. This is the strain. Change of diameter to its original diameter, strain. Change of width to its original width, strain. Change of volume to its original volume, volumetric strain. It is also a form of strain. Here from the figure you can check, I have put a negative sign in the two equations because suppose a bar is utilized to check the value of the strain. If the length will increases, then directly the cross sectional area of the bar will directly decreases, because we are making the materialistic approach as a constant material. So if the particular value of the length will increases, then the diameter or the width of the given section will directly decreases. So it is a necessary condition to put a negative sign if we are using a same element with a different strain values. You know the basic equation, R is equal to rho L upon A. The basic equation for finding the value of the resistance, where rho that is the resistivity of the material, L that is the length of the material, and A that is the cross sectional area of the material. In the particular strain gauge load cell, we are using such equation to find the change of the length, to find the change of the resistance. The strain gauge load cell, the figure shows the basic concept of the strain gauge load cell. A cylinder has been provided. Over the cylinder we have the four resistance. The resistance, let's say R1 attached over here, then the R2 will cover the half of the cylindrical periphery, then R4, then R3, which is also covering the half of the, almost half of the periphery of the cylindrical section. Once the force, the cylinder is made up of the steel material. Once the force will be applied, suppose we are applying the compressive force, then there might some chance that the length of the particular strain gauge will be, length of the particular cylinder will be decreases, but at the cost of increasing the diameter. There might some chance that the second case, or we can say after the particular application of the force, the blue color shows the second position of the cylinder. The cylinder itself will getting decrement in the length but increment in the diameter. So if the diametric portion will increases, then there might some chance that the R3 and R2 having the increase in the area will be increases. The length of the particular resistance will be decreases slightly. So due to the change in the length, due to the change in the area, the resistance value will be directly affected. And what we are supposed to do, we are simply checking the delta R, what is the final resistance available, and we are calibrating the resistance value in terms of forces, and we can easily find the value of the force. The second figure shows the same concept, but it has highlighted the resistance from the top view as well. The cylinder is made up of the steel material. Do remember, steel having the higher modulus of elasticity, so we are preferring the steel as a basic instrument, or we can say as a basic material for checking the value of the strain, for checking the value of the change of the shape. We are preferring the steel because of its high modulus of elasticity. So guys, here we are winding our lecture over here. What we have discussed today, we have started with the different load cell. First of all, we have discussed a basic hydraulic load cell, then we have discussed the pneumatic load cell, and at the end of the session we have discussed the strain gauge load cell. Over here the topic force measurement is getting over. From the next lecture we are going to discuss the torque measurement. We are going to discuss the concept of the torque and the different instruments which are useful for the measurement of the torque, and the particular instruments we are going to discuss in detail which are very much useful in the mechanical industries for the measurement of the torque. Till then, thank you.